This is the Pivot Mach 4 SL Team XTR with Fox Live Valve technology. Quite a mouthful. What you see before you is a high-tech carbon cross-country race bike. Designed for the serious cross-country racer looking for the most technologically advanced mountain bike. And this technology doesn't come cheap, as this bike retails for a whopping $12,000. Recently, I got my hands on one of these beasts to test out. And my goal is to find out if a $12,000 bike is really that much better than a bike costing half as much. Or how about even a tenth as much? In this video, we're going to take a closer look at the high-tech bike and see what $12,000 really gets you on the trail. Is it more fun? Will it make me faster? Well, let's find out.
Oh, in hard gear. I do it every time.
First, let's go over the spec. As you would expect at this price point, you're getting a top-of-the-line part spec, beginning with the electronically controlled Fox Live Valve suspension. We'll dive deeper into that in a little bit. This bike can be had with either a 100mm or 120mm fork setup. I'm riding the 120mm version. The rear travel is 100mm on all models. The frame is full carbon and uses a DW Link suspension design. For those that don't know, DW Link is known for its high anti-squat levels. In layman's terms, it means it's more resistant to bobbing while you're pedaling. The frame is very lightweight at a claimed 4 pounds. The Team XTR build I tested came spec'd with top-of-the-line Shimano XTR 1x drivetrain, as well as Shimano XTR 2-piston brakes. There are lots of carbon parts on this bike, starting with the Reynolds carbon rims laced to Industry 9 Hydra hubs. I should note, however, that this test bike was not equipped with those wheels. It had a set of DT Swiss alloy wheels. Turning those wheels are race-face next carbon cranks. You also get carbon handlebars. And Pivot keeps the Kashima theme going with a Fox transfer dropper post. Speaking of Kashima, let's go back to the suspension. On this bike, we're looking at a Fox Factory 34 step-cast with live valve. The step-cast fork has material removed in the lowers to shave weight. The rear shock is a Fox Factory live valve. So what is live valve exactly? Well, it essentially acts as a lockout, a really advanced lockout. The system uses accelerometers to lock and unlock the suspension as it rolls over the terrain. On smooth sections, the system locks out for more efficiency. When things get bumpy, the live valve opens up. The system can adjust up to 1,000 times a second, and reacting in just 3 milliseconds. That sounds pretty impressive, but will it make a difference on the trail? Well, let's check it out. The test track are my home trails near Chicago, the Palos Trail System. About 22 miles of hand-cut cross-country trails. The terrain is rolling, with everything from smooth hardpack to roots and rocks to punchy climbs and to G-outs. The live valve has 5 settings, 1 being mostly open, and 5 being mostly locked out. The Pivot rep recommended starting at 3, and then adjust accordingly after that. I was warned that setting 5 can be a handful. Oh, and I should note that Pivot claims this bike weighs in at a crazy light 22 pounds. I started my ride on a trail called Campground. It's got a mix of tight rooty sections with some fast flowy sections and a lot of pedaling in between. Coming from a hardtail, I immediately appreciated the suspension rigidity when pedaling on smooth sections. The system was quick to react when hitting bumps, and the transition from locked to open felt pretty seamless. Climbing with the bike was pretty effortless. I really noticed a difference on the steep punchy climbs. This particular section is steep with lots of rocks to break your traction. It was cleaned pretty easily on this bike. Many of the more techish climbs were pretty effortless. It makes me wonder why I don't own a 29er XC rig. I found myself using a harder gear most of the time, and that's something I attribute to the lightweight and the XC geometry. After running a few miles in setting 3, I decided to try other settings.
I'm gonna be on setting 1. Most plush.
Setting 1 is mostly open, and it opens up the suspension with the slightest bit of trail chatter. In this setting, I made it a point to smash into every rock and root I could find. I was pretty impressed with how well it handled through rough sections for a short travel bike.
I shouldn't have done that. Not bad actually for 100 mil travel.
Oh, do you still have it on?
I have it on the plushest setting actually.
Okay.
Switch it back to like UCI World Cup. Let's go setting 5. Do you know how many descents I've done on big mountains with my rear shock locked out, not realizing it?
Setting 5 runs it where it's mostly closed and it takes quite a bit of force to open it up. I was warned about setting 5.
Oh shit! Oh. The hell was that? Ooh. Oh. I don't know. Like something just smacked.
Like a
Ooh. Yeah, it must have been. Oh. Yeah. Oh.
I was pretty shocked at how I completely lost control of the bike on a trail that I'd ridden countless times before. I rode too close to the embankment and clipped a pedal. And from what I can tell, the bike got thrown offline and broke traction. Since the accelerometers are located on the fork and the rear axle, I can only assume that they didn't register that impact with enough force to open up the suspension. It's easy to just smash through anything on a full squish, and I lulled myself into a false sense of security. Aside from a slightly fat lip, I was okay.
Ooh, man.
After finishing that segment, I settled in on setting 4, which was the sweet spot for me.
We'll take the hard.
The bike did everything you'd expect from an XC bike. I was impressed with how it climbed and how well it handled chunk. It was pretty poppy and nimble as well.
Oh, baby. See, 100 mil of travel, it works.
I didn't touch on the part spec, but it performed as expected. The Shimano Xtr Drivetrain was flawless, the Xtr brakes worked great. The one negative was the wheel set, which was the DT Swiss alloy set, but like I said before, those are not the actual wheels that come with the bike. I imagine the carbon Reynolds wheels are going to be a lot more responsive and precise.
Yeah.
But was this bike $12,000 worth of fun? Well, it's not that simple. There is no doubt the bike is fast. Alright, so let's answer the burning question in this video, and that is, did this bike make me faster on the trails? And the reality is, it really didn't make me much faster, if at all. As someone who's not a cross-country racer, I think I could squeeze similar performance out of the cheapest spec version of this bike, which goes for $6,200. That version gets you Fox performance level suspension, an XT SLX drivetrain and brakes, and alloy wheels. As an amateur, I think I could seriously run that bike in a race series and not feel underbiked. I'd have to be racing at a high level, looking to shave fractions of a second to need the live valve equipped bike. I will note that this bike is a great climber, and it was very enjoyable to ride. I liked it, it was poppy. What it boils down to with any bike, it's really not the bike as much as it is the rider. I don't feel like I could push the Mach 4 SL hard enough to really get the benefits of that tech. Experienced racers might. The base build would be more than enough bike for me. Of course, $6,200 for a base build is still a lot of money, and there are a ton of other XC bikes out there. But what I've learned about high-end brands is that the engineering and tech support is usually excellent. If winning races was the priority, the cost becomes secondary. Something to think about when you start getting up to these really high-end bikes. It's not about they're going to make it much more fun for you to ride. They're just going to help you eke out that little extra that you need because you are at a higher level. As far as fun factor goes, all I'll say is that the best bike is the one you're riding. I hope you enjoyed this leg of my journey. Thanks for watching.
Don't show that to your doctor.